September 20th. The minutes were included in the packet. I will entertain any changes or additions or a motion to approve as presented.
Approve the minutes of the council meeting of September 20th, 2022.
And a second from Councillor Opers. Thank you, Councillor Salinas Oliveros. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And any opposed?
Aye.
I believe that was an aye. Thank you, Councillor.
That was not me, that was him.
Thanks for being with us, John. This is the portion of the meeting that we do have reserved for public comments. Tonight, we would accept comments on items either on the agenda or not on the agenda. And speakers are asked to keep comments to 3 minutes. I don't believe we received any cards here in person from anyone wishing to speak. Phyllis, anybody online or any comments that were submitted prior to the meeting?
Mayor Coons, I received no comments, and I don't know that there's anyone online that wishes to comment.
Okay. Then we shall proceed. Our business agenda this evening starts off with our extremely busy planning commission. Fortunately, we get to meet with these folks a couple of times during the year to actually conduct business, but this is a good opportunity to understand all the work they're doing for us. And with us tonight, Economic Development, Suzanne Duff. Our Planning Commission Chair is here in the room, Stephen Howard. I see a couple of other members online, and hopefully Chair Howard will identify you and start it. And of course, they have a fancy presentation.
Yes, Suzanne's put together a few slides to help summarize the work we've done over the last year. I don't actually know who's with us tonight.
Okay, can you sure and speak into the mic, Stephen? It's a little easier to hear.
Sure thing.
Really.
All right, so I think we met last July, so a year ago. I've had some change in membership over the last year. We continue to have a full planning commission, which has been wonderful. And yeah, let's go ahead and talk about what we've gotten to. So in this case, this year and the last year, we're actually looking at the whole thing, which I know you have all seen. So we've had quite a few design reviews, a few variances, some subdivision work. Commercial center at the S-curves is still where most of our design reviews are coming from, but we've had a few others around the city, including PCL, or not PCL, the Ron Wilson Center here. Aside from our main project, which I'll talk about in a moment, the one legislative code amendment we've had came from council, which was actually updating some of our ordinances around marijuana shops. So here's a few examples of the places around town we've been working. And but the thing that we've had the most meetings on this year has been our legislative code update. This is phase 2. Last year we did phase 1, where we sort of surveyed the code and seeing what needed changing with the TGM project. And we continue to work with the same consultant this year to actually prepare adoption-ready code based on those findings, and it involves looking through many packets of many pages to discuss and make decisions about the recommendations that the consultants have brought to us. We've had some stakeholder meetings, and we've gotten some good feedback from community members. I wish I could say that more of them actually came to the meetings where we were discussing things as a group, but we have gotten feedback, and that's been very helpful. Moving forward, I'm actually going to ask, the one other thing that's been happening kind of in parallel to our meetings, and the commission itself is starting to get involved tomorrow night, actually. It's, I think, going to be our first meeting on it this year. Several years ago, we did a housing needs analysis for the next 20 years. And we're actually taking the time now to work on what strategies we're going to adopt to help meet those housing needs. And so our meeting for that is actually going to be tomorrow night. I believe you all have one next month after we've gone through it. And I don't know, Suzanne, you have anything to say about some of the activities around this project that didn't directly involve the Planning Commission?
Yeah, so right now we've been doing a lot of work with the consultant. This was a project that received a grant from the state of Oregon, as Commissioner Howard mentioned, to follow up on our first phase, the housing needs analysis, where we took a broad perspective look at how much land we need for housing and what types of housing over 20 years. The follow-on to that is, that's great, that's a plan, but how do we actually work the plan and make sure that that housing gets built? So we received this grant in February. We'll be working with, thankfully, the same consultant that we worked with on the housing needs analysis. So they're to have a step ahead in understanding our community, to develop a set of prioritized strategies, actual action items that we can do to influence and move that needle on housing production in our community, because we know that we're in a shortage of that, and it's not getting created, especially at the price levels that are needed to meet our housing needs. So right now, a lot of the work has been the background phase of conducting a survey, doing interviews with stakeholders in our community, that like Polk CDC and other organizations, home builders, to kind of understand what the current climate is for this. So that information is being packaged together into some information and recommendations. The Planning Commission will be having their first work session on that tomorrow night, actually. And as Commissioner Howard mentioned, it'll be coming to the council shortly thereafter. So some good work moving forward on that for sure. And then
I'm just going to let her keep going.
I'm all warmed up here. Yeah. So just looking forward, kind of our next year work plan. As Commissioner Howard mentioned, we're continuing to work on that code update project that's also grant funded. So we're in that second phase of moving towards adoption. Yay, this is all the grading through the actual code language and edits to that. So I know it's been a little tedious, but will lead to good things. And it dovetails nicely, I think, with that housing production strategy. And that's one of the strategies, is to take out some of those barriers in our outdated code to allow for more housing development. So they'll continue to move forward with some more community feedback on that draft language. And then we'll go for adoption in February or March is the schedule for that. We've mentioned the housing production strategy. We'll be doing some work sessions on that this fall. Continuing with new development review, it's probably not quite as fast of a pace as we saw over the last couple of years. Not a huge surprise there with interest rates and cost raising, but the revised car wash application is in. A lot of people are excited about Monmouth getting its first car wash. So that one's under review. Development on the Ash Creek Station, there's still some more parcels to be built out there, and we're seeing some of our smaller triplex, fourplex projects pick back up in some of the infill areas. So site plan reviews coming forward. And then just lastly, we know we're in that stage of needing to update our transportation plan. Those are generally updated every 10 to 15 years, and ours was last adopted in 2009. So there's definitely some more planning and changing that's happened in Monmouth since then, since we did our 99 bike ped study and downtown plan. We'd like to weave in that new information in there as well. So lots more on the horizon. They've been a great group to work with, and just they think through their recommendations and have very vibrant discussions before it comes to you. A lot of those recommendations on legislative amendments and code and plan changes. So I really appreciate all of their thoughtful input and feedback for sure. I think that's all we have prepared.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. I don't know if council has anything they want to ask before we.
Any questions or comments? Our council liaison to the committee, Councillor Carey, is online and probably has no questions, but also attends all the meetings, does the work as well. Councillor Oberst.
I just want to know why these folks are being so lazy. They're not getting anything done.
Right.
Oh my
Yes, Councillor Oberst is happy to have left the Planning Commission to rejoin council, so he doesn't have to work quite as hard as these folks. This is a lot going on. Yes, Councillor Carey.
I would just add that the degree of complexity, degree of detail that planning commission works with on especially the major ones, and we've got a bunch of major ones coming through right now, is voluminous. Fortunately, they're pretty articulate in the nomenclature and the processes, thanks to Stephen. But there is a lot of work done, and as I've been saying for some time to council, warning, that it's going to hit our desks with a fairly large thud pretty soon, and so we'll want to be prepared to tape our ankles up and dive in and sort of authenticate the work that our planning commission has done in almost every case, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and
Go ahead.
I just want to comment on all the good work that you're doing, and thank you. That's a lot of work, but it's really important and meaningful work to our community. So please, send our appreciation to the rest of the committee.
I'll do that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you, newest member, Holly Tangeman is on tonight, who's getting a good dose of this, I think. Oh,
You jumped into the deep end for sure.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
So just one sort of quick question. I've been just a little concerned on the whole zoning package that we're being kind of led by DLCD. Is there any sense of that on the commission, that they're kind of telling us what to do instead of us telling them what we want?
No, they've done a good job of advocating for their point of view, but there's lots of points of
At
view
the end of the
on the
day,
planning
if-
commission.
Yeah, if you don't like what they're saying, you're telling them something.
Right, and
Yeah.
we have.
Good enough.
I think the biggest thing that's come out of this project is it is a lot of work, and trying to fit it all into the window of a grant deadline
All right.
is very challenging. And we actually carved out an extra meeting this fall,
Right.
very late meeting this fall, when we didn't have the time of the consultants, because we had sort of line by line discussion about that very thick second packet that we went through, just to make sure that we had all of our comments and decisions and guidance figured out before we moved on, because there just wasn't enough time in the meetings that were planned. So the
So-
planning commission has been taking extra time as needed to make sure we figure out what it is we want out of this process.
So you said you had a meeting without the consultant?
Right.
Yeah, okay. That's what I thought I heard you say. I just wasn't. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Thanks for joining us, Stephen, and appreciate it. We will look forward to the rest of this work.
Yep.
Our next item, again, is one of these projects we've been working on for some time, and very excited to see Annika here, because tonight, Community Development Director Suzanne Devner talking to us about our downtown improvement plan.
Yeah, well, before I turn that over to Aniko, thank you for being here. I just want to give a real quick introduction. This is the topic, the downtown plan, that you've seen a couple of times now for work sessions. So really pleased and happy to be bringing you the finished final product on it here. the last work session you had was held in August, and that was to discuss some action items and how to prioritize those a little bit. So since then, we've taken all that information, that feedback, put that together into the draft plan, sent that out for public comment and review. And now we are ready for the plan adoption process by resolution. So, and starting the exciting work of implementation, yay, and doing all these great. We are joined virtually by Aniko, our project consultant with the University of Oregon's Institute for Policy Research and Engagement. And also, I think Ella was going to join us. She's our intern from Western Oregon University, who's just been doing a stellar job at helping us, especially with the outreach at the various community events and engagement with Western Oregon University, which is so crucial to the overall success of this plan, I think. So without further ado, I will turn the time over to Aniko, and I think she has maybe a couple of slides, or maybe not, to share.
Thank you so much, Suzanne. And I just want to say it's great to see everybody again. It's great to be at the end of this process finally. And I also want to give a huge shout out to my student team who are in the middle of their next term of school. And so they've sort of left this project behind, but are, I'm sure, they poured a lot of work and effort into this, and so I'm representing them today, but that this work is really came from them too, and also, as Suzanne mentioned, Ella, our awesome WU intern. I also want to say my internet has crashed a few times today, so if I all of a sudden cut out, I will try to get back on. Maybe I'll try using the phone, but we're gonna hope for the best here. But what I wanted to do with our time today is just take a little bit of time to review where we've been since the last time we were all together talking about this plan in mid-August. I want to give you sort of that overview of the plan. So I'm going to share the plan overview, which is kind of like the executive summary of the full plan. So we'll look through that together quickly. And then really what I'm hoping we focus a lot of our time and any questions and comments you have on today is around implementation and what that could look like. Because as Suzanne said, that's really the place where we're at with this plan, which is really exciting, and it's going to be a community-wide effort. And so I want to make sure we're kind of setting you up for success around that. So that's what I'm hoping to cover today. Does that sound good to everybody? Any questions before I dive in? Okay, great. So just as a little bit of a reminder, the last time that we all talked together was on August 16th. And I just wanted to kind of remind you of some of the things that you pointed out and let you know that we've really tried to incorporate those things into the plan in various ways, particularly in all of the details that we provide about the implementation. So some of the things we talked about were around in the sort of character and aesthetics category of really how do we define what do we want Monmouth's downtown aesthetics to be. We had a little bit of a conversation around using the Main Street Design Committee to help with that, or maybe some of the existing commissions that the city has, but sort of talking about how that can be a project task for some volunteer residents in the future to take on. Something we also spent a little bit of time talking about was the farmers market, which everyone is very interested in, but what we kind of discussed is being careful that if we move forward with this idea in any way, we're really learning from the challenges and successes of the past, because this is something that has been tried before, and we want to make sure we're, going off of the best information from what we learned from that. In the mobility section, we talked a little bit about the idea of sustainability as an important value for you all as a council and for the city. And so really thinking about how we weave into that mobility section policies that are going to support alternative means of transportation as a way to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and just, get people moving and in a healthy way downtown. We also talked a little bit about parking solutions and just acknowledging that there's a lot of commuters that are coming in and that creates pressure. And if more residential ends up happening downtown in the future, that will also create pressure, and sort of just weaving into this plan mitigation for, awareness that parking can be a challenge and how we mitigate that. In the business development section, we talked a little bit about that underlying value you all hold around equity, and really thinking about how in businesses downtown, we're helping culturally specific businesses grow and thrive, and also BIPOC and LGBTQ owned businesses, kind of acknowledging that those might require support, and that we've got a great university community that can, be helping us with that as well. And then finally, you all gave some great suggestions around implementation, and we'll talk more about implementation.
Frozen.
Oh,
It's always been our problem, has been
yeah.
implementation. Sorry.
One froze.
Great.
Does she know she's frozen? That's
I
the
don't
question.
know. Aniko, you're frozen.
Yep, she knows
Okay,
she's
yeah.
frozen.
Yep. I think you can still hear when you're frozen, but you can't.
Sometimes you can,
Sometimes,
yeah.
yeah.
She was saying her internet was going off.
Mhm, mhm.
Makes you appreciate mine, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Although I'm still not a fan of YouTube TV. We're still struggling with that. It shuts itself. I mean, it's just in the middle of a show, it'll just go right back to the guide regularly.
Well,
Hmm.
YouTube TV,
Oh.
which is what we use to see network television. Yeah, so it's not a MyNet problem. It's a YouTube
Right.
TV problem. That's what I was told.
Well, and depends if you're using a Fire Stick or.
Yeah,
Sure,
yeah,
sure.
everything. Yeah.
Router, yeah.
Relatively heavy. Haven't watched TV in 2 years.
Yeah.
You know,
I would rather-
ever
While
since-
we're waiting for Aniko, I was going to offer that if you had
We'll
questions.
just chit-chat among ourselves.
Right. Talk amongst yourselves. If you had questions about the plan, I could try to answer them to keep this kind of. She should text her. She's trying to get back in, so we'll see.
So I just wanted, I kidded around when I said implementation. We have a bookshelf full of downtown plans for the city over the last 40 years. And this is the first one, I really like the implementation. So.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that was the part I think that we recognized was something to improve upon in some of the previous ones. So, I would agree. It gives us a pretty solid roadmap for how to move forward and who the partners are and timeframes and some of the resources for that. So, all right.
That's what I was going to ask about is partners. I scanned through it briefly. Is there a list of, sort of the partners that you're going to be working with? I think about things like transportation options program, since that's what I used to do.
Yeah.
Who are you going to work with?
Yeah, exactly. And we have started identifying those in the action plan under the partners column. But that's a really good point, Councilor Schultz. That if there may be, there will be other partners that we'll need to reach out to and identify as well. So always looking for.
Don't reinvent the wheel.
Right. Yeah.
Programs already exist.
This is an ambitious plan. It's not something the city can do on its own. And so partnering with MBA, the chamber, Independence, our sister city, Polk County Tourism, certainly, and Chariots is another really great one as well for the transportation mobility items as well.
Yeah. No, I
Hey,
do
everyone. I just want to say
back.
I'm
You're
so
back.
sorry about that. I'm back. I'm going to keep my video off just to see if that helps. But you all continue talking and I'll jump back in when it makes sense.
Oh, I was just going to say that I do appreciate the part that you had towards the end of the packet where you did just that, Ms. Duffner. You put or the team put together like the plan of the existing partners that you know of right now in each of those categories. And so that was really nice to see. It makes it just more concrete.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
tells us where to kind of start and get
Yeah.
started on
Yeah.
some of these items for sure.
It's yeah, it's towards the, I think it's towards the, it's kind of small though. You have to.
I'd also
Okay,
add,
we're ready.
Go ahead.
We're ready.
Well, it sounds like we're having a great conversation around implementation, which is where I want to go anyway. So maybe we just hop that and I'll share a couple of thoughts around implementation. Do people feel like it's useful for me to go through like the overview of the entire plan, or would you rather, I mean, have you looked at it and we just skip that and talk about implementation? Where is everybody at?
I mean, I think obviously, since this is the good public opportunity for us to say that overview, even though we're a little more familiar with it, I think
Sure.
it's good to briefly review that, and then we'll hit some highlights, high notes on it.
Sounds good. So I'll share my screen here. And let's do this. And I want to pull up, here we go. Okay, are we seeing the plan summary here?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. So, right, just sort of as a reminder, this is a 20-year vision, and we're doing this now because it's been about 20, it's actually been over 20 years since the last one. And so this is a really good time for us to think more about that long-term view. What do we want to have happen? If we can sort of think now and start planning that out, we might have more success in making that come to fruition in the end. So that's kind of why we're doing this now. Of course, there are some really important values that underline what we're, everything that's in this entire plan. So from the city council, we have sustainability, we have communication and engagement, and we have diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then in addition to that, what we heard through the community engagement for this effort is that community, quality of life, and inclusivity are extremely important values for community members, and that what folks are looking for in downtown is a welcoming neighborhood. They want to see entertainment and great cultural events, and have Monmouth's downtown be home to a diverse population of ages and cultures. So those are kind of the things. Of course, we've been working on this for a year now, which is really exciting. And we've had a whole lot of engagement as part of this. So we did, the initiation of this last fall. And then when the student team came on board, we really doubled down on engagement through surveys, through workshops, through focus group. We did walking tours. We've engaged with the university in various ways. And then we used the summer to kind of hone in through another survey and through some other focus group events into what are priorities for this plan. And now we're here at the end. It's been created and we're getting ready for adoption. So just as a reminder, the 5 key themes that came out of all of this are character and aesthetics, quality of life, events and activities, mobility, business development, and tourism and visitor experience. So these are the core areas where we've got goals and recommendations housed for future downtown improvements. And then the recommendations really dive into what are all of these things going to look like. And we've sort of helped to prioritize them by dividing them into short-term things, mid-term things, so the next 6 to 10 years, and longer-term things, which may not happen for another 10 to 20 years. And then some recommendations that kind of need to be ongoing. So this is kind of the summary here of all of the different recommendations that live in the plan, but the actual plan goes into more detail, which I think is what everyone was talking about. And I just want to make sure to pull this up so that you can see in the action plan part, we've got it drilled down a little bit more. So we've got who's going to be the lead for this particular recommendation and who are some of the important partners that can support that happening. And then even further than that, we have this resources appendix that sort of is associated with each of the different main areas. So there's lots of great tools here for everybody. As you're starting to dig into how do we make this happen, we've got lots of other links for you to explore, case studies for you to look at. And hopefully all of this will kind of help with kickstarting what is, how you actually start getting this work done. And so that then brings me to the implementation aspect of all of this. And so I want to kind of highlight 3 key players that we've been thinking about in terms of implementation. So the first is the city. And obviously, the city plays an important role in shepherding this plan forward. You've got kind of that policy mindset, and you've got some access to funding and some access to infrastructure building. And so that's kind of like you're a good place for those kinds of actions to live. So anything related to funding, infrastructure, planning, policy making, and then sort of the relationship building and coordination, those are all things that the city is great for. But city staff also kind of have limited capacity. And so volunteers are going to be really important in all of this to help make everything happen. So when the city can't take a lead, we need to think about who else can kind of step in when it doesn't really make sense for the city to be that lead, or the city doesn't have capacity to be that lead. We have to think beyond to who else can help contribute that. And we've really been thinking about the Main Street program as a great organizational structure to help build that volunteer capacity that we think is really necessary to moving the things in this plan forward. And so just as a reminder, you all newly kind of adopted Main Street and become a Main Street community. And one of the things that means is you'll be developing these 4 committees that are based around economic vitality, design, promotion, and organization. So Main Street gives us this great framework that's already been well thought out that we can start really building around and leverage these committees. And we've identified those throughout in the recommendations where we think certain committees might be a really good fit for helping move that recommendation forward. But this is, I think, such a great way to think about complementing what the city can do. I also want to highlight that staffing a Main Street program is kind of difficult in the beginning as you're just getting started. It's a completely volunteer effort. And so one of the things that Suzanne and I have been talking a lot about is how might we leverage the Resource Assistance for Rural Environments, or RARE AmeriCorps.
Oh, we lost you again.
Freeze, yeah.
She's gone. So she was referring to the RARE, and I think Monmouth has had a RARE in the past before, and they quite commonly have gone in and helped communities get their Main Street programs up and running. So it couldn't be a good way to segue into a more permanent position. So that's a program that we'd apply for on an annual basis. I think they call for applications in the spring or the summer of the year before. So something to keep on our radar, and especially when we have our new city hall, we might have space for them. So, yeah. Great.
Hey, Suzanne, I'm so sorry, everybody. You're doing a great job of filling in for me.
Suzanne picks right.
Rehearses.
That's okay.
Well, I think the last thing I wanted to say around implementation, which actually is not, I've stopped sharing my screen right now, but the university is also a really important partner that we've been talking about throughout this plan. And it's actually been really exciting that by hiring Ella as an intern through this, we've actually really started to take action on that front of building those relationships and partnerships with the university community, which is so, it's such an important player in the town, but also their proximity to downtown is really, important for this particular project. And so I think that's kind of those three main partners, the city, the Main Street program, and the university are kind of like what I'm thinking of as those pillars that we should think about leveraging as we move towards implementation in this. And it's been super encouraging for me to see just how Suzanne has been working with Ella and the conversations we've had with other folks at the university to just better understand like how can we actually coordinate together. And so I'm really excited for obviously, as someone coming from university, I'm excited about the potential and think that's just a really great relationship to build up and a great source of potential future internships for students to be helping with this, but also that being a great benefit to downtown. So I'll kind of stop there and just open it up for any questions or thoughts. And hopefully I won't drop out yet again.
Comments, questions, Veronica?
I have a question. So is this implementation, is this where possibly the charging stations would be, like for the tourism plan? Is this for implementation?
Are electric car
Yes,
charging
yes.
stations, is that in there somewhere?
I don't know. Maybe I missed
Yeah.
it. I think Ella mentioned to me something about it, but maybe I missed it in the plan.
Yeah, so in the mobility section, I'm looking through it right now to see if I can find. We did add mention to that I think in the alternative when we were talking about alternative transportation around adding something about charging stations. And I also think that our first and most important recommendation of the mobility section is for the city to update the city's transportation systems plan. And I think that's another really important place where that would live. And that's kind of a more comprehensive way of addressing a lot of these transportation things that we were noticing in downtown, but that are actually, citywide issues. But the last bullet point of that recommendation, M1.1, update the city's transportation system plan, is to consider planning for electric vehicles.
Right. No, that's great. Thank you. Thank you. And this plan it looks amazing. It is really fantastic. You go through it and you have to just thank you so much for the work.
Thank you so much. And we hope we made it easy for you to hop to resources and kind of hop around in it too, because there is a lot there. And we want to make sure we were giving you kind of a good resources to dig into, but not that you have to read all that all at once.
Thank you.
Yeah, that really impressed me too. The difference between us trying to come up with something ourselves and
yes, it was
people who actually do this for a living, do research and connect with resources. So yeah, it's great. Yes, go ahead.
John Kerry's coming in.
Oh, Councillor Kerry. I'm looking at the plan, not the screen. Go ahead, John.
Thank you very much and good evening. Good work all the way around. I think as we look at implementation, I think one of the things we're going to want to look closely at is to see where, and I think you've done a fair job of this, although I haven't read it in the detail that I would like. But to be certain that we've got a sidewalk replacement plan sort of there. So let's make sure we're matched up and we're not working at odds with that. Same with, oh gosh, there was 2 or 3 other things that we just need to make sure that we work together. You talked about the implementation of the transportation plan and suggested that part of that be a parking study. We need to make sure that in the transportation, we currently have we have bicycles on Main Street. You're suggesting they go out to the periphery, which I think is good. So we're going to need to make sure that we get those things in line to the degree that they aren't. And it makes Russ Cooper's life easier and everyone else's. The question that I had, and this is one that we always think about when we get into planning meetings and so forth. You had your short-term, near-term, and long-term suggestions for implementation and really attention to. I wonder what a matrix of that would look like in terms of, are we really loaded in the back end? Are we loaded in the midterm? Are we loaded in the short-term stuff? Things, because for example, a study, that's a midterm deal, but yet you just said a minute ago, transportation needs to be an urgent issue. I agree. So how do we get those match up? The different time frames on each of them, and do we have any kind of a balance between each?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And I actually think something Suzanne and the other city staff that were reviewing this noticed when we were sort of finalizing all this is we actually have a lot of ongoing actions where it's kind of like, this thing needs to just keep happening for a long time. And so it's actually pretty heavily weighted to that ongoing. And that makes it a little bit difficult to think about how do we sequence these things. And I honestly think and would like to say about the timeframes, these are suggestions, but it's really going to end up coming down to the resources that are available and the interest of the people who are the leads for the actions. For example, we might want to have a bunch of these things happen in the near term or think they're good activities for the Main Street program to tackle right away. But if it ends up taking a bit longer to get Main Street on its feet and get organized and other things come up as priorities, some of that stuff may just have to shift down. And so we made this plan as a Word document in part so that Suzanne and folks could keep updating that matrix. So I think my encouragement to you is, this is our best estimate right now of when we think it might make sense to sequence things, but it's going to become more obvious to you all as the implementation gets underway, what actually is going to make sense. And so sort of at least coming back to this once every year to kind of go through that matrix and do some updates and make some notes, I think would be a really smart thing for the city to be doing regularly in consultation with the Main Street program folks. Does that kind of help answer your question?
It does. And one of the suggestions that I'm going to have for our group at the end is that we schedule a sort of regular discussion on this, whether it's a quarterly report, whether it's part of our annual goal setting, but we make a good concerted look so it doesn't join, as Councilor Oberst mentioned, that long list of downtown studies that reside on a shelf. To me, this is excellent. This is really good. This could really help the city. And I think we need to sort of lean in on it. And before I yield the floor, I have one question. I read I read a comment that sort of stopped me in my track. It's in the cultural and the CA 1-2. It talks about placemaking and tactical urbanism. I'm familiar with that term, intrigued by it, and perhaps you can give me a little context. Cool.
Yeah, for sure. I had the opportunity not last week, but the week before to attend the Oregon Main Street Conference. And I really, really highly suggest that if you're able to in the future, you try to head to that conference because it is just excellent. It's a gathering of local level community movers and shakers. And that idea of tactical comes up a lot in that Main Street placemaking context. And one of the sessions at the Main Street conference, it was held in Klamath Falls downtown. And in one of the sessions, the participants went out and with paint, and they started painting parts of the road to make a little.
About this, as you've been on the MyNet board and been involved in some of these discussions over the years of the sort of problems that have cropped up.
Yeah, but I think that Marty hit that this, rather than piecemeal the cleanups, I think this gets to the heart of what needs to change, or what would be more efficient with the change, I guess is a better way to say it. I wasn't able to go back and do each of the diversions, but there's a couple things that seem to might need a little bit of explanation for the group. One, I don't recall the language, and maybe it's been the same all along, but under powers of the board, number 7, G, it talks about one of the powers of the board is to accept loans, and and it seems like that's saying that it's always been under L. It appears that the MyNet employees could become part of the PERS retirement system. Heretofore, that was never spelled out, and it was very explicit that they were not public employees. So that seemed to be a change. And whether that's a big deal or a good deal, I don't know. But I don't recall that. Was that for the negotiations?
I want to make sure I understand your question, Councillor Carey. So there, in prior agreements, there was a provision that said that MyNet employees could be members of PERS, of the Public Employees Retirement System, and in fact, the employees have never been, and I believe would not be eligible to be in the PERS system. And so we removed the reference to the PERS system, if I'm remembering correctly.
Well, it's in there now, I believe.
Oh, if it's in there now, okay.
The board may provide for any of MyNet's employees to be members of the Public Employees Retirement
I'm sorry.
Association.
Okay.
Yeah, and
I
actually,
mixed it up.
that is old language. If you look on page 278, at the very bottom, that goes back at least to the 2007 agreement. So that's just carrying forward. Of course, whether or not they're eligible for PERS is going to be a matter of state law and PERS determining that eligibility, not a condition of the MyNet IGA. But it is just to the extent that that language has been there before, and also the language about accepting donations. If you look on page 277, item F on that page, that language has been in there as well. So not new.
Yeah, okay. Well, I guess the question would be, especially relative to the police, ought that to be there? I mean, if they're likely not eligible, they've not ever been, why would we include that?
Well, I'm not sure that they're not eligible. I mean, it's never, no one's ever asked me, but they are employees of an intergovernmental entity. And so I think our public employees that would be eligible.
And our finance director, Janet Chenard, has just joined on camera.
Right. I do think that they are eligible. I think they opted not to be early on. And there is an opt-in opportunity when I think an ORS 190, and I do defer to Lane on this, but I think there's an opt-in opportunity like there is with any new agency to do that. And so I think they did not.
Correct. Yeah.
Whether or not the language is still relevant is a good point, but I think that they would have been eligible at least at one point. And I've had conversations with their finance director about whether they might someday become it, and he wasn't sure. So
thank you for
that's what I know.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's fine. I just we were so explicit in previous agreements that these are not employees of the city of Monmouth, not employees of the city of Independence. And I guess I sort of thought that might have been part of the.
No, they're not, yeah, they're not city employees, but they are employees of an IG, of an intergovernmental entity, which itself is a governmental entity.
And I'll just drop in from my family example. My sister worked at the Oregon State Bar, which is not a governmental agency, and yet she was a PERS member because it's considered a quasi-governmental agency, and I think probably the same thing would hold here.
League of Oregon Cities employees
Yeah.
are PERS eligible, as our Oregon School Board Association employees.
I think Council of Governments employees can be PERS members. So there are a lot of non-governmental, non-public employee PERS members because of the way the statutes have been written. Hope that helps you feel better, John.
Yep, go ahead, Counselor Carey.
No, I feel fine with it, and with the august counsel of the last two speakers, I feel really good about it. Perhaps you could talk a little bit, Marty, about the change in number 11, the indebtedness clause. That clearly puts the debt, any debt that is further incurred, squarely on the shoulders of Minnet, and no longer are the cities there to back that up as I read that. And I guess not any more of an explanation than to just sort of confirm what that reads like.
Let's see. I want to make sure that I'm looking at the same section. I'm actually not sure that I don't know that we made any significant changes to that section.
If I can, what that's getting at is, as you know, in the past, the cities were required to basically stand behind the Minnet debt, the bonds. And that was by action of the cities. Cities agreed to do that. But what this is saying is that if Minnet incurs an obligation independent of the cities, then that is a Minnet obligation and not the cities. So Minnet is not going to incur an obligation that becomes a liability of the cities, basically without the city's consent.
Yeah, I'm trying to.
Recognizing, because they have these new operations that are separate from the original agreement, so separating that out is important.
Yeah, let me reread this. That's fine. I'll go offline and read it.
Yeah, so A on our packet, page 247, is in the red line version, clearly is where it's added about any debt incurred by Minnet, but the cities may from time to time borrow money for the benefit of Minnet, and then that's where the 55-45 would still be in effect, so. So that is just an add in a nod to their other business operations.
And honestly, whether Minnet would be eligible to incur debt, at least more than just operational debt on its own, is questionable, I think.
Right.
Because probably any lender would want the cities on the hook. But this is an authorizing statement that unless the cities agree, then Minnet is not incurring debt on their behalf. And I think what it is supposed to really represent is sort of the standing up of Minnet to becoming more of an independent entity capable of incurring debt. But again, good luck getting that past or bond council or whatever the case may be. But there are probably smaller operational obligations that Minnet could take on that would not constitute debts of the cities.
One could argue if they put it on their credit card, they have incurred debt.
Right?
I will note, they also have leases that are not backed by the cities.
Good point. That's a good point. Yes. The Dallas lease,
Like
for
the
instance.
building, yeah.
Okay, Counselor Carey's looking for any last.
Yeah, I looked at the revenue section. I was a little, some of that has been there for a long time and I didn't understand it all, but I do well enough. This is good. This has modernized the thing. It reflects what is happening now. And I think we should be in favor of it.
Madam Mayor, would you be willing to accept a motion?
Please.
Oh, I would like to move to approve Resolution 1955, adopting updates to the MindNet intergovernmental agreement and authorizing the city manager to sign the agreement on behalf of the city.
And I would like to second that.
Thank you, Counselor Oberst for the motion and Counselor Belz for the second. So any further questions or discussion? All right. And Phyllis is online to take a roll call for the vote.
Counselor Belz,
Yes.
Counselor Carey,
Aye.
Counselor Oberst,
Yes.
Counselor Salinas Oliveros.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
All right. Thank you very much, Marty and Lane, for getting us through that. Appreciate again and our fabulous partners at MyNet and the City of Independence, and long may she prosper. That brings us to our reports, and my mayor's report this evening, I guess, so long since we've been together that have had an opportunity to have been involved in several meetings and communications with partners. The one thing I really want to talk a little bit about was the first annual Manit Day Festival that was held by the Marshallese American Network, Interacting Together, an organization based in Salem. And Manit Day this year was held on Saturday, October 1st. And it was an amazing event. I'm pleased to say they've already asked to be available to come back next year and hold their second day. But we were promised a day of Marshallese, Marshall Islands culture, food, music. What we may not have been prepared for was a group of dignitaries from the Marshall Islands, including the president of Marshall Islands, his Honorable David Kabua, his wife, First Lady Ginger Kabua. The Minister of Cultural Affairs was here. The Minister of Foreign Affairs was present, and a senator from their parliament. They have a unicameral parliament, and senator was here with us. He lives in Portland, interestingly enough, because he is a retired member of the U.S. Army. So he is looking forward to being more engaged with Monmouth. This again, really, they selected Monmouth because many of the folks of a certain age were part of a group of Micronesians that came to attend Oregon College of Education in sort of the 70s and 80s, and grew very fond of this place. Again, some of them have relocated to the Salem area, but there were folks there from all over the country, including the largest settlement of Native Marshall Islanders in Springdale, Arkansas. So the President Kabua had been in the United States. He had met with President Biden, and he had addressed the United Nations earlier in the week. So having an opportunity to have him here and meet him, and then I was invited to a luncheon afterwards with them, where I got to speak with them all again and get to know the senator quite a bit better, and really looking forward to a great opportunity to develop our friendship with them and partnership. They were meeting with Western Oregon University to talk again about how to help provide a welcoming education for Marshall Island students. So anyway, it was a great event, and then the afternoon was filled with dancing and games, and really hope we have an opportunity to get more folks there. I appreciate members of the Monmouth Arts and Culture had set up a booth, and were there for much of the day. And it's exactly the kind of event I think we can really grow. If Western hadn't had a home football game that day and it hadn't been 85 degrees, might have gotten a few more folks, but really, really a fun time. So that brings me then to other reports of boards and commissions. Yes, Councilor Belts, why don't you?
I think we're all up since it's been a month.
It has been. However, the library board does not meet in July and August. No, wait, August and September.
Oh.
So I didn't really miss any meetings, which made me very happy. We did meet on October the 12th, and the head librarian, Chris, gave us a great summary of data information, what happened during the summer. But the thing I want to point out was what the president of the Friends of the Library said. He was talking about they have a shed that they've built on the property, on the library property, to store their books. And he complimented Counselor Oberst and said he's put in well over 100 hours helping build that shed. And I just needed to make sure everybody knew that had happened. I was so impressed. I mean, none of us have extra time, and to put in that much time is just stellar to help.
Thank you. It was doing what I love, which is working on.
Yes.
And you've never seen anything that Councilor Oberst has built. What you need to know is everything looks like it could be a centerpiece in your living room, even if it's a shed.
Yes, absolutely.
A lovely shed.
So,
Yeah,
thank you.
my wife gives me a hard time about that.
All right, thanks. And Councilor Salinas Oliveros.
Yes,
Here?
so Historic Commission met in September, and we were really discussing what was happening in October. I don't want to take too much of their thunder because they are coming in November to let you know about all the great things the Historic Commission has done. And we had a busy November with Columbus Day Storm and wonderful stories being shared, and author John Dodge here at the Senior Community Center. We also had the ribbon cutting for the mural. If you have not gone to see it on Catron on the site of PCL, it is absolutely gorgeous, and I encourage you to go see it. So I don't want to give any more details because the Historic Commission will come and present to us in November. We also had a really great Hispanic Latinx Heritage Month. We had every elementary school participate in artwork. We had children's artwork in Monmouth and in Independence, and it was absolutely lovely. We've had some new businesses who participated that really enjoyed being a part of this. We had a celebration at the park. We had, and then we ended with the Latino list. It was a movie night here at Senior Center, and we actually had some members who had never been here that came to that. And that was really exciting. And we had a really nice, so it's on HBO if you have HBO, and it's called the Latino List. It's part 1. It's really lovely. And I brought one of my daughters, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, Mom, this is like you and Papa's story and Grandpa's stories, and it was really special. And we had people who also, we had a small discussion afterwards as well, just building that community. And it was a really well-attended and nice event of just coming together and really starting to have a conversation of, different cultures and races and things that come up and how we can deal with that together. So that was really amazing. And then we have October, so we have Dia de los Muertos that is going to be celebrated here at the Senior Community Center along with Halloween. So technically, Dia de los Muertos starts on midnight on the 31st, and it goes through All Souls Day on the 2nd. It's really a happy time. It's a time to remember your loved ones. It's a time to help them come back and visit you during that time. It's also very cultural. It's very religious time as well. We're going to have a community ofrenda here at the Senior Center. And so anybody in the community can bring a picture, a poem, flowers, anything that they would like to share for any of their loved ones that have passed. And so it's a really special time to do that. We also stuffed, I don't know how many hundreds of bags of treat bags with information about Dia de los Muertos to be passed out to all the elementary school kids. And they are welcome to bring those treat bags here to the Senior Community Center for treats. And Ash Creek Art Center is going to be here for activities, and Mexican hot chocolate's going to be served. So just a really nice, just a really nice time to just learn about Dia de los Muertos and in combination with Halloween. So that's also happening. And then lastly, this Thursday, the first meeting of, right now it's called the Homeless Prevention Advisory Group, is meeting on this coming Thursday. So I'll have more of an update for you after that meeting.
This is the Polk County
Yes, Polk County.
pilot funding, and the advisory board's been formed, and Councilor Salinas Oliveros has offered to represent us on that board, although it'll be fairly administrative work, but I think having her voice is going to be helpful. Yes, Councilor.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
I just wanted to make a point. I was standing outside of the Independence Museum, and there were all the drawings that children had done, and a little girl was pulling her mom, and she says, see, here's my picture, here's my picture. And I just thought, how sweet. And then she said, what is this? And they said, oh, it's the museum. She goes, oh, let's go to the museum, Mom. So it really did bring it all back.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you.
So I have a report on the Parks Commission, which very short, really. We had as you may recall, there was a small parks tour, and I was unable to go on that. I was out of town, but the board went around to all our small parks and made notes of any issues they saw. And the list is frankly pretty short, and there were none that rose to the level of a budgetary consideration. It was all routine, fairly routine maintenance stuff. The skate park, the money's in hand. The bid has been received. The groundbreaking ceremony is being planned for early November.
That's fantastic.
That's all I have at this point is early November.
Early
So
November.
it's
Okay.
around the corner. Meanwhile, we're waiting on the final agreement with state parks for the rest of Monmouth Recreation Park improvements. And once those documents are in place, we'll start seeing about some real, hard drawings instead of the aspirational stuff we have now. Finally, we have, thanks to the city stealing our new communications director from the Parks Board, we're short yet another body, and we have a need for 3 members of the Parks Commission. It's a 7-member board, so we're down to a quorum at this point. So if anyone has an interest in being on that body, we could stand somebody to join us. There was discussion around it might be a really good idea to see if we can get somebody to represent CYS. on the Parks Board. So if there's anybody if you know anybody who's involved with CYS, or I'm sure that Russ will reach out, we could really stand some more folks on that board. Also had Traffic Safety and Commission, and in general, the discussion was around the Highway 99 improvement package, and we talked about that at the last meeting. And also, there's an interest in trying to work with the schools to see if we can get some bicycle rodeo activities going, and perhaps bring forward by, and trying to turn this into more than just traffic safety, really trying to turn it into a transportation commission. We talked about some of the safe routes to school things. I just saw a big story today in the Times of somebody leading one of those mass bicycle rides to school, sort of a mobile bus,
Walking school bus, riding school bus, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Walking
Walk
around
to school day was just last
Right.
week.
Right. So some interest around that, maybe looking into supplying helmets and lights. But the big thing is get parents and students both to turn out and learn some basic bicycle safety is the idea. So I'll let you know how that perks as we go along. And that's all I have.
Great, thank you. The Senior Advisory Board mostly was talking about all the great events it was sharing with the Historic Commission and other activities and events that are going on here at the Senior Center. So, but the big news coming up, of course, is soup and pie. So this Thursday is the soup and pie sale here at the Senior Center. And that is a great event. Again, a fundraiser that is put on by the Friends of the Monmouth Senior Center. So soup and pie goes from 11 to 1:30, I believe.
I think it's 11:30.
Or 11:30 to 1.
11:30
in here.
to, 11:30 to 1.
It's in here. Hang on.
I'll be in my meeting. It's
Oh, you're right. 11 to 1:30.
11 to
1:30.
1:30. That's what I thought. So, yep, come by, get a piece of pie and a fabulous bowl of soup, and support the Friends of the Monmouth Senior Center. Speaking of board and commission appointments, we did have a couple of volunteers who have stepped forward, and hopefully get your input on appointments. The tree board, as we've heard, is unable to meet. They don't have a quorum of members, and we do have some interest from Teresa Silcox. Teresa is currently completing her Master Gardener certification, as well as has been involved in many tree plantings and is very interested in that work. So we appreciate her application. We have one opening on the Senior Advisory Board, and Sharon Deckman has applied for that opening. Said she is new to our community, but she actually was a member of a senior center in Ukiah, California. So brings some fresh ideas and wants to encourage more seniors to participate in activities, and started a neighborhood watch in her new neighborhood here in Monmouth. So it sounds like a real go-getter, and I would entertain a motion to appoint Teresa Silcox to the Tree Advisory Board and Sharon Deckman to the Senior Advisory Board. Thank you for the motion, Councilor Oberst.
Second.
And second, Councilor Salinas Oliveros. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 And I see none opposed, so we will welcome them to those new volunteer appointments. And Councilor Carey, I didn't call on you about boards and commissions. I guess with the Planning Commission report, did you have anything to add?
No, just the Planning Commission laid out all of the things they've been doing. Tomorrow night, there's a session on the housing production strategies that will be interesting and voluminous and really good material. And look forward to reading that in the morning and listening in tomorrow night.
Great, thank you. All right, that takes us to our city manager's report. Ms. Marty Wine.
Thanks, Mayor and Council. I was missing the last council meeting because I have been attending a couple of conferences that usually happen during the fall. One was the International City County Managers Association Conference, and that was in Columbus, Ohio. And rather than bore you with walking through all of the content from that conference, I'll just say that I attended and it was very helpful. There are a bunch of current issues that we have going on in Monmouth that the content really matched well with. Same thing with League of Oregon Cities Conference, which happened in the first week of October. We had a lot of really relevant and opportunities to work with our colleague cities and learn about issues and topics that we are dealing with here. So that's been really valuable opportunity to be able to go to those conferences. I have 2 notes from the police department. One I was asked to share from our Friday notes from 2 weeks ago. Our command staff from the police department attended the Oregon Association of Chiefs of Police annual conference. And there were various speakers, including, it was helpful for the whole command staff to be able to go to hear about standards and certification and work that DPSST, our training and standards board for the state, has underway. But there were also classes about restorative justice and creating a culture of restorative justice, comprehensive verbal and physical de-escalation classes. They took a class on trauma recovery, wellness, and resilience. So wellness in our police department is something that our chief is very focused on as well. And also creating an inclusive and ethical culture. So they've been doing some work in professional development on that front. And I was just asked to highlight that because it's something that I think they've found really valuable. Our police department also hosted an active shooter response tabletop exercise together with our partners. This was last week. Members of the fire department, the Independence Police Department, our Central School District, and our police department all participated together. And it was really, even though that prospect of such a horrifying event, it's not ever something that you want to have happen, being prepared for it and training for it was something that was really valuable for them to all work together on. So they got to refresh and do some training all together, and that was very valuable. And then finally, I've reported this in community notes and also on my Friday notes, but I wanted to mention City Hall because we're seeing activity on the site next door, which is very exciting. Our general contractor got bids for many elements of the project at the end of August, and we're working now to get all of those subcontractors under contract and working. Most notably and visibly is our excavation team. We have a utility permit and an excavation permit, and so that's what you're seeing happen on the site right now. We're working together with our building official to secure what will come next would be the foundation and structural permits, and so that work is underway. And I was going to mention one other thing about our Swinnerton, our general contractor, has also begun to order our long lead time items, things like our elevators, electrical switchgear, HVAC systems. Those are not things that you see, but they're going to end up being very important. And so, so the project is progressing very well, and it's exciting to see some progress or something happening on the site.
Did you tell them to be sure and get the window order in as well?
Yeah,
Your
the windows in.
experience?
Thank you. Yes, that's a good point. That's all I have tonight, unless you have any questions.
Thank you. That's great. Yeah, great work by our police department. I'll just put on my school district hat for a moment. That tabletop exercise, they were led by some experts at the Willamette ESD, and according to Chief Ben Stange, a 4-hour meeting could be 2 days worth. So they are going to meet again to continue to work on this. How do they coordinate? But I think what's important for many of us to hear after the most recent large horrific incident of this kind, where we've all seen the video, we've watched and heard about officers standing around for hours before taking action, that both IPD and MPD just said, well, don't worry. No matter what the incident, we're going in. we will be going in. That is not even a concern. We will be safe. We will do it safely, but that's we're not going to make the news. We are going to protect those kids. So that was important to hear. That reassured certainly the school district safety manager who was a part of that exercise. No, our partners will be there for us. Just quick, any council comments or announcements? I want to be sure and also mention, along with Dios de los Muertos, the Halloween Spooktacular.
Right.
The Monmouth Business Association is putting on, and so that will run from 4 to 6:30 on Halloween itself, Monday the 31st. Downtown businesses will have a flyer in the window, being encouraged to hand out candy. Also, because there are businesses that don't have a presence on Main Street, there'll be a pop-up in the park, and families will be encouraged to also stop and visit those. And there's going to be prizes for decorating. I'm very excited to be getting to help judge that and hand out prizes on Halloween night. So, of course, the weather is not going to hold. It's supposed to start raining this weekend. So I want to remind everybody to drive safely when we get those wet roads. But Halloween coming up.
Sorry. Carrie has a comment.
Yes, Councillor Carey.
Got a lot of business tonight, but I wanted to pass on a comment I got from a guy that lives in my neighborhood. He comes by periodically and tells me, this is why I like living in a small town. He was, apparently there was a little bit of a conflict initially on the utility bill drop-off location, and it was a little cumbersome. And he specifically wanted me to give a good shout out to Russ Cooper for finding a good solid solution and finding it quickly. So a bit of good news, to go out of a long, hard meeting. So nice job, Russ. Rod Bach thinks you're a superstar.
That's great. Thanks. And Councillor Overs.
I'm going to suggest to Councillor Carey that it's the sense of the commission that he heal quickly, and hope to have him back in here soon. Miss having you here, John. So take good care of yourself. Looking forward to the Halloween and the soup and pie.
I know. Has so many cool things going on. All right. If there's nothing else, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn the council meeting and take a short break before reconvening as the Urban Renewal Agency.
So moved.
Thank you. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Great. All right. Thank you. So we are adjourned. I have 8:05,
Yeah,
so if
okay.
we can take 10 minutes. We're ahead of schedule. We can All right. And that
Housekeeping amendments.
brings us to the
I legislated.
call to order the Monmouth Urban Renewal Agency meeting for Tuesday, October 18th. And the roll call, please, Phyllis.
Ms. Belt,
Here.
Mr. Carey,
Here.
Mr. Lopez and Ms. McKeel are both excused. Mr. Oberst,
Here.
Ms. Salinas Oliveros,
Here.
Ms. Kuntz.
I am present. Thank you very much. And we have no public commenters here. Did the agency receive any public comment submissions?
The agency did not, Mayor Kuntz.
Not the mayor. Okay, so this brings us to our consent calendar, and our last meeting was August 16th of 2022. Those minutes were included in the packet.
Move approval.
Yeah.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Oberst and Ms. Salinas Oliveros for the motion and the second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Perfect, thanks. All right, we have one agenda item, and this is, I don't know how Marty or Suzanne or anybody has had any time to work on this with all the other stuff going on. But this is a topic we have said we want to visit, and we have had discussions on this in the past, so I will turn this over to Suzanne.
All right, thank you. Yeah, just a brief introduction here for our consultant, Elaine Howard. Good evening, Chairwoman and agency board members. As the mayor mentioned, this is something, taking a look at amending our urban renewal plan and the duration. It's something they brought to the agency over a year ago. It's been a little while. That's why it's taken a while. Been busy, but we've been thoroughly kind of vetting proposal ideas and to bring you a solid recommendation this evening. So you'll hear that proposal tonight. We have great direction from the state's expert in urban renewal, and that's Elaine Howard, that we've hired to help guide us through this and help prepare our financial projections and revenue analysis through Tiberius Solutions as well. So with that, we have a little PowerPoint presentation to walk through the amendments with you, and then we'll have opportunity for questions and comments on that. So I'll go ahead and share my screen and turn the time over to Elaine.
Thank you, Suzanne. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. I was in a meeting before this where all of a sudden my microphone went off and I couldn't hear anything. And so it made it difficult to finish the meeting. I'm Elaine Howard of Elaine Howard Consulting. I've been doing urban renewal consulting for the past 17 years all over the state of Oregon. I've been working with Nick Popenick and Ali Danko of Tiberius Solutions for the last 12 years. Nick and Ali do all of the financial analysis for us. Next slide, please.
Sorry, my screen just froze up. Okay.
What we are going to go over is the role of the agency, the amendment provisions, the process, and the draft motion to move it forward. Next slide. The role of the agency in an urban renewal plan substantial amendment is to review the plan amendment and to determine whether it should be forwarded through the formal public review process, including taxing district consult and confer, which is sending a letter to every taxing district informing them of the city council's intent to review a potential amendment and notifying them of the taxing district impacts, to send it to the planning commission for review of conformance to your comprehensive plan, to go to the county for a briefing. They do not need to vote on the amendment. And then to the city council for a hearing that's advertised citywide and vote on a non-emergency ordinance that doesn't go into effect until 30 days after vote. Next slide. A plan amendment is adopted through public input, and the public input is throughout each one of these steps that we're moving forward on. So tonight there would be opportunity for public input in this meeting if people attended or watched online. So the first step is always the agency, and then the taxing districts, as I said, then to the planning commission, and then to the city council. Next slide. The changes that are proposed to your plan are to increase the spending authority, and I'll have another slide to go through that, to add property, to add projects, to remove the duration provision, and to do general updating of the plan. Next slide. The maximum indebtedness of any urban renewal plan is the total amount of money you are allowed to spend on projects, programs, and administration over the life of the plan. Your present maximum indebtedness is $12 million. The statute that governs urban renewal allows the city council to increase that maximum indebtedness by their vote alone through a substantial amendment process by a set amount. That amount is 20% of the original maximum indebtedness as increased by inflation every year that you've had the plan in effect, and then you take 20% of that total amount. That would equal $16,359,245. So an increase of about $4.3536 million. That increase may be done after that substantial amendment process that we went through on the prior slide. And in doing the substantial amendment to increase the maximum indebtedness, we have also recommended that you remove the duration provision of the plan. Duration provisions were put into plans originally before maximum indebtedness existed, or sometimes if a community had a taxing district or some citizens who wanted a duration provision included in the plan. By removing the duration provision, you are allowing the maximum indebtedness to be the determination of when the plan ends. By statute, ORS 457, that maximum indebtedness is the provision for when an urban renewal plan ends, and a duration provision is not required in the statute anymore. Next slide. This is the Monmouth Urban Renewal Boundary, and it shows in stars, and the next two slides will show those a little better, the two areas to be added. So this is the existing boundary. One parcel to be added is shown here by the arrow. It is 6.28 acres, and the next parcel is much smaller, but 0.52 acres. And Suzanne can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe both of these parcels are being added to be able to help provide affordable housing.
That's correct. Mm-hmm.
Next slide. The projects to be undertaken whenever we do a substantial amendment, we ask the city to go through their plan and look at all of the projects that are existing within the plan and the new projects that they want to do, and allocate the remaining maximum indebtedness to those projects. So these show projects to be undertaken in your water system, sewer system, transportation system, park system, power and light system, community development and facilities, financing fees, and administration. The first column of numbers is what these costs would be in fiscal year in 2023 constant dollars, so dollars as of today. The year of expenditure dollars are those costs over the remaining time frame of the urban renewal plan. And that varies just a small amount within your plan. Next slide. I asked Suzanne to go over the project section, so I'm going to turn this back to her for a second.
Okay, thanks, Elaine. Yeah, so just to give a little bit more explanation of the projects that are being added or clarified in the plan for the extended duration. We've grouped them into 5 general categories. The first one being investment incentives. And these, you can think of these projects as public-private partnership development and redevelopment opportunities where we can serve as a economic development partner, that projects that might not be able to happen but for some urban renewal incentive. We've reserved some funding for those projects. Examples of ones that we've done in the past that you may be familiar with are the Ash Creek Station. We actually gave credits towards their system development charge fees. And then more recently, Monmouth Commons, we were able to help with, again, some permitting fee incentives and also some offsite utility improvements, water and sewer in the vicinity of the project. So it's been a really good tool to be able to spur and be a catalyst. And it's kind of one of the more traditional uses of, I guess, urban renewal. If, again, the goal is to try to get that increased building and the taxes that go up from that, because that increases the tax increment revenue that goes back to the taxing districts eventually. So the other group of projects is just under administration. This would be the staff support needed to help manage and develop projects. They don't just happen on their own. They take some legwork to make those happen. And then we're targeting water, sewer, and transportation improvements. So really focusing heavily on the infrastructure, and this ties in nicely with the 5-year capital improvement plan for urban renewal projects that we brought to you several years ago. So just again, accelerating some of those really expensive water, sanitary sewer line, backbone infrastructure and streets that are hard for individual development to bear on their own and can sometimes serve as a barrier to those projects being able to develop. So again, being that partner, making sure that our infrastructure is keeping up with our growth and development and serving us for the future, into the future as well. And then in transportation specifically, we're looking at some rapid flashing beacons at Madrona and Ash Creek Station to help with safe crossings. And then also some transportation street connections in our northeast and southeast sections of town. So that's what I have as an overview of the proposed projects.
One of the requirements of preparing a substantial amendment is looking at the impacts to the taxing districts. So when we do an amendment, we usually look at the impacts of the amendment only. So the increase, that increase in maximum indebtedness, and then we look at the total impact. So the impacts of the amendment only for the city of Monmouth is about $1.5 million. And then you can see the total for the other general government taxing districts. And you can see those impacts don't start until fiscal year in 2027. And that is because your existing maximum indebtedness won't be used up until that time. So when we figure out the amount from the new maximum indebtedness, we start that the year the existing maximum indebtedness is completed. Next slide. So this just shows the full impact, so of your remaining maximum indebtedness and then the added maximum indebtedness starting in fiscal year end 2023 through the projected end of the district in fiscal year end 2035. And again, for the city of Monmouth, that is a little under $4 million. It is the, other than the, we'll do the education districts next, but it is impacted the most, and the next highest impact is to Polk County. Next slide. We have the same impacts for the education districts. The thing to remember about urban renewal is that it has an indirect impact on the local schools and the education service district, because they are funded through the state school fund on a per pupil basis. So the monies that come from the permanent rate levies go into the state school fund. Any city across the state that has an urban renewal area has an impact on those permanent rate levies that otherwise would have gone to the state school fund. The legislature then does what we call backfill that state school fund to meet those per pupil targets, so that all schools get the same amount of funding per pupil as adjusted by some other factors. The community college system has a similar funding scenario, but it's not the state school fund, it's a community college fund that is also based on classes being taken. So this shows those impacts, but these are not direct impacts to those education districts because, again, they are backfilled through the legislature. And those impacts total about $5.6 million. And that's of the amendment only. The total impacts for education, the full impact is showing from fiscal year in 2023 to fiscal year in 2035. Again, shows the total impact of the existing maximum indebtedness, and that total column at the right is both the education district and the general government district. So that's why that amount is that $14 million. Next slide. We'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. If the agency decides to move this forward through the public review process, these would be the next steps. The first step is a consultant confer letter that goes to all taxing jurisdictions that overlap the area, a planning commission meeting on November 2nd, a city council hearing on December 6th. Again, that is noticed citywide. And then the potential city council vote on the non-emergency ordinance on January 3rd. And then just any questions that you might have. And this is the suggested motion after you do some deliberation. If we want to either come back to this or if you want to do deliberation here, that's up to you.
Mr. Carey.
Thank you, Elaine. Just a couple of clarifying questions. And you mentioned it, but it slid by me. One of the provisions of this substantial amendment is to remove the duration provision. But yet we're talking about the district ending on 2035. You mentioned that there's a dollar amount threshold. Perhaps you could hit that just one more.
Yes, thank you. And that is confusing. Our estimates of 2035 are estimates. So that's given what the tax increment receipts are now, and then projecting growth on those tax increment receipts based on information that we received from your staff of potential new development projects and using a growth rate. So then we estimate when we think you will reach that maximum indebtedness, and our estimates are fiscal year in 2035. But if some of that development doesn't transpire or it doesn't come in at the levels that we thought, that could be a little longer. If other new development comes in, other than what is projected, it could be a shorter time frame. So that duration is just an estimate. The actual time frame, if this amendment is adopted, would be based on when you reach that maximum indebtedness level.
So once we have spent all of our, in effect, spent all of our available debt, it ends.
Correct.
So it's incumbent upon us. It's incumbent upon us to move as quickly or as slowly as is necessary.
What I gave a presentation to another city and they told me they were holding their money for like a rainy day fund. And I said, well, why would you be doing that? Because what you want to do is get your money out working to provide that impetus for development to to occur and to improve those situations in your community. So yes, spending your money as quickly as you can makes the most sense, and actually the more projects you can get done more quickly, the farther your money goes, because you can limit the amount inflation takes as a bite out of your money. So always in urban renewal, proceeding as quickly as you can makes the most sense.
And then I'm sorry, John, I just wanted to clarify one thing. So the duration becomes when we spend our maximum, or when we in debt, when we bond, or when we take out the debt, right? So,
And that is confusing also, and your finance director is here, but at some point, if you issue a bond and that uses up the remaining maximum indebtedness, you still have to collect tax increment proceeds to be able to pay off that bond. So you won't be able to incur new debt. You can, let's say you issue a bond for $5 million. You can spend that $5 million on your projects, but you don't close down your district until you've made all those payments on that bond, including the interest payment.
right.
And I don't know if, Janet, if you want to add anything to that.
Yes, that was just something I wanted to make sure was understood, because we do plan to issue some debt in order to be able to do our projects sooner. And therefore, the repayment of that debt will likely span out as late as 2035, regardless of what the development is. And if the development slows, it will take more time to gather or garner your tax increments to repay the debt. So there are a lot of estimates in that 2035 number that, it's a pretty good estimate, but there's a lot of variables.
But we're not under the gun like we are in our current plan to get that done. Right. Okay.
Right.
Thanks. Go ahead, John. Sorry to interrupt.
This would be a very important explanation that's included in our communication with the other taxing districts, because, the first read on that for me was, we're going to get rid of the, because as the C's mentioned, we're sort of under the gun on this time frame because we've got this time duration on the existing. Now, if we were to extend that and we say, well, we're just not going to worry about a time provision, that's going to go away. Those with the jaundiced eye would say, well, they're just, building a reserve fund or whatever. It wouldn't quite have the same poignancy as you described it. So that'll be an important, obviously an important communication to the other affected taxing districts.
Thank you.
Yes.
Two quick questions. One, down the road someplace, might another council be able to do this again? Or is this a one-time deal?
It's a one-time deal.
Okay.
Unless-
Second question. Go ahead. Sorry.
Unless you get concurrence from taxing districts that represent 75% of the permanent rate levy. So if you did want to do it again, you would have to look at your tax code levy and get approval from the boards of the taxing districts that represent 75% of that levy.
Okay, very good. My second question, I think I saw a reference go by to removing properties that don't add to the tax increment. When I look at the northeast corner of the map, and I see this chunk of land upon which sits Ash Creek School, and I believe the school district owns a fair amount of that land along 16th Street. And we have other land that may be coming under development soon, and I wonder why we leave school district land in when we might be picking up a different parcel that would yield additional increment down the road. And that's all I have.
Well, Elaine, correct me if I'm wrong, just to respond to council or to board member Oberst, is that we're limited by how much land we can bring in by the state statutes. And we're getting very close to that with.
Right.
Yeah, we wouldn't be able to bring in that whole
So
parcel.
you
for
push
example.
something
You
out, you
can't-
couldn't bring
It's not
something else
a
in.
swap, yeah, as I understand it.
Fair.
Right. You're limited to 20% of your original acreage, and you're very close to that at this point. So having that school district land in doesn't hurt you.
Okay.
That you could take it out if you wanted, but it's of no benefit to you to do that, and it doesn't hurt them to have it in. And if
Alright.
at some point you wanted to try to do a project that intersected with them, you could do that.
Okay. Good enough, thanks.
The land, the 2 parcels that we're planning to bring in, were those simply outside of the district? And we're going to redraw the boundary to bring them in, is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. Well, and then finally, and then I'll be quiet, but this has got a heavy emphasis on infrastructure, which is certainly needed and appreciated. One of the other crying needs that we have right now, of course, and it's become a mantra, but affordable housing. Would it be possible for us to shift at some point, once we get after tomorrow night's meeting, for the planning commission, get a little better sense of where we're going with the affordable housing production? Could we shift some of that in that more contemporaneous direction? Or are we locked in sort of to the projects that are included in the proposal?
The agency always has the ability to change projects in the plan, and you have to do that through a minor amendment to the plan. That can be done by a resolution of the agency. But if after you get more information, you look at the projects and perhaps you get some other funding to do some of those other infrastructure projects, or they aren't as important, you could always allocate some of those monies to affordable housing. And you're right, every city I work with, this seems to be this and homelessness, the issues.
And you know, I think we've done a nice job of vetting the infrastructure needs that we have. So you know, really all of the projects that are noted there are legitimate and timely and would be good. It would just be a matter of whether or not there was an issue that was a bit more pressing, sort of on the front end of that, and to know that we could, should that become evident, that we could do that, is reassuring. Thank you.
Okay. Other questions, comments?
I promise that was my last one, but you know, I'm looking at them in the packet, and the concept of revenue sharing was new to me. I'm not an expert by any means in this, but that was a sort of a new concept. Is it new?
It is
or are we
new.
just where
It's
it's
relatively new. It came in, I believe, in 2009, so it's relatively new. And what the statute says is that whenever an existing plan, and yours is called an existing plan, increases its maximum indebtedness, you then fall under those revenue sharing provisions. And those provisions in the statute have certain thresholds under which you must conform. So the first is when you reach 10% of your initial maximum indebtedness in your annual tax increment revenues, the following year, you must start revenue sharing. And for the time frame up until when you meet 12.5% is that you still get that 10% amount, and then you get 25% of anything above that, and anything that other 75% goes to the overlapping taxing districts. The assessor that just shares that back with them. So the agency doesn't have to share that back. They just tell the assessor through filling out what's called the UR50 form that they will be taking X amount of increment the next year, and it equals to the amount that is the formula for the revenue sharing. Once they reach, you reach 12.5% of your initial maximum indebtedness in your annual TIF revenues, then you are limited to that amount for the remainder of the life of the area. That provision can be changed only if, and this of course, it can't be consistent. So this one is 3 of the 4 top taxing districts that levy the permanent rate levy. So that usually includes a school district, a fire district, a county, and a city. So if 3 of those 4 say, you know what, we don't want to do revenue sharing, we want you just to complete your area and shut it down, you can do that. But you have to get votes from their boards to do that. In the letters that are going out to the taxing districts, it explains that feature. And we have not contacted, unless Marty, you can tell me differently, we have not contacted them and asked any of them if they want to not do revenue sharing. The formal letter presents that information, and the assumption is if anybody is interested in that they would contact the city and say, hey, let's talk about this. My assumption also has been, I was in front of Polk County for the Dallas plan a couple of months ago, and I don't think from their comments that would be of interest to them. And typically a fire district is anxious to start getting money, so I think they'll like the revenue sharing. So that would leave, that would be 2 of the 4, and you would have to get 1 of those to vote not to do it. So I'm kind of thinking that wouldn't occur, but the revenue sharing would start.
And is that built into the financial projections, or that would change those slightly?
It is built in. The revenue sharing is built in. If there were any change to that, those projections would be modified.
So basically, assuming everyone opts into revenue sharing, that's already built in.
That's correct.
But it's not an all for one or one for all.
It is an all for one or one for all. It's just
So
that the top
all
4
in or all in.
yeah, they get to make the decision for everybody else.
Right? Other questions or clarification? So I think, I mean, obviously we've done a lot. We really, the minor amendment that we did a couple of years ago when Chad was here, and we met with Elaine and Tiberius and actually issued the debt, that has really spurred on some of these bigger projects that we're talking about, and giving us an opportunity to keep that momentum going has been great. Before that, we had some small projects we were able to help out with, but it does affect our partners. It is an opportunity for conversation, and I think, as Elaine mentioned, Marty and I are already well aware of the fire district's concern about this. They serve Monmouth and Independence. Independence has 2 main urban renewal districts, I think. Large, very large ones, much larger than ours. So that already impacts future revenues to the fire district. Reminder that the value of all the properties in the district increase, that increment, that difference doesn't go out to these other taxing districts. It collects for us to be able to do projects and pay down debt. So we know that's a concern, and that's a conversation with those partners. As Elaine said, it doesn't impact, even though the school district, as you can see, has the biggest dollar amount, it doesn't impact because of the state equalization formula. So not taking money from the school district, we're just changing where that pot of money comes from.
Right.
All taxpayer money, believe me, it's all taxpayer money.
It's all real money. That's right.
It's all very much real money.
And just in terms of what you said about your percentage of assessed value, yours is at 4.41%. So that's a really very conservative, reasonable use of urban renewal. I work with many cities that are between 20 and 25%. For cities your size, 25% is the maximum that you can use. So your amount, and again, it impacts you more than anybody. But when you look at like Polk County, countywide, the impact on their budget is much lower than that 4%, because they have that full service area and only your 4% of that, of your area is being impacted. So although again, it is very real money, it is a small percentage of their overall budget.
Although and again, we think about those big districts, but our Ash Creek Water District, the Polk Soil and Water District, also doing important work, and they face all of the cities added together. It can impact them. So it's not an easy decision for us to do this because of that impact. But we all know that eventually making these major investments, this is really a great way to do it, and get the projects done, as we've said, to help spur on the development, because undeveloped land never is worth more to these taxing districts than developed land is. So I guess if folks need more information or more time to digest this, we're not time sensitive here, but it looks like they've got everything ready to go for us to start the process. And this is absolutely the first opportunity for people to comment. As we've seen in the process, there are the partners' comments, there's public comment at both the planning commission level, at the agency level, at the city council level.
So, Madam Chair, I would make a motion, but the one that's in my packet is really wordy compared to the one that Suzanne
On your
has.
screen?
So I will wait for Suzanne to put the less wordy version on screen again.
Oh, yeah.
There it is. I move that Monmouth Urban Renewal Agency authorizes staff to commence the formal review process of urban renewal plan amendments.
Second.
And I would ask clarification, Lane, do we need to say substantial amendments?
No.
No, the substantial is part of the process. Big amendment is what you're doing.
Okay, thank you. All right. Seeing no comment from Mr. Carey to add to that, I'll go ahead and ask for a vote on the motion. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 And seeing none opposed, we'll just start the ball rolling. Again, lots and lots of opportunities to ask more questions, figure out those impacts, communicate with our partners and with the public about what this means. But it's a tool. It's a tool we did not use well for a long, long time. It's sat there kind of rusty and in the corner. And we were grateful to be able to take advantage of it while we still have some great low interest rates. Knowing that this, again, just another opportunity for us to get some really important work done for the future of our community. Mr. Cooper, did you have anything to add, or were you just here to strong arm us and remind us of those projects and their big price tags if we were hesitant?
Nothing to add.
Okay. Thanks. Any other comments or business before the Urban Renewal Agency? Then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thanks, Elaine.
All right. The Urban Renewal. Thank you, Elaine. Thank you so much. It was great to see you again. You were so helpful last time. This is super good, plain language. I really, really appreciate it. And the work again, Suzanne and Marty and the team are doing to get this to us. And